Here we go again. There's a certain synthesizer that we've located and, well, you know what happens next. Wait a second, before we do that, let me just say that this isn't a normal synthesizer road trip. We're driving the synthmobile to the airport instead of across the country. Then we're renting a substitute synthmobile to get something really special from point A to point B. There have been a few occasions where we've really gone out on a limb to deliver synthesizer happiness to a special client, and this is one of those times. There's a lot of money on the line, and I need to make sure we deliver. I'm kind of nervous here. Okay, go ahead and do that intro thing.
Here at Centaur, we live to bring old synthesizers back to life. We find vintage keyboards wherever we can, and our crew restores them back to their original splendor. We also supply parts to tens of thousands of customers all around the world so that they can restore and repair their own keyboards. At our shop in Texas, we have on hand parts for the synths used by pros from the 1960s all the way to today's brand new keyboards. Our inside and out knowledge has made us known as the Synth Wizards. This adventure started with a simple text message. Okay, let's pause right there for a second for some background. Our most popular episode of Synth Wizards has been episode 9, in which we located and brought back to life a Yamaha CS80. One of the viewers of that episode contacted us with an interesting story.
He said he had a CS80 that he had bought brand new and that he hoped to become a better keyboard player one day, but that never really worked out. So it basically sat unused, except that his wife played organ on it a few times. Were we interested in buying it? Well, not just yeah, but hell yeah. And the amazing thing is, it was right up the road, about an hour's drive. So Carlos and I jumped into the synthmobile, and off we went.
Well, at least we got there as quickly as we could.
Down that long stretch of road.
Let me know if you see a house that looks like it has a CS80 in it.
All right. I'd be surprised if we see a house.
What we found was amazing. It wasn't like a barn find, where you discover a really rare car covered in dust and dirt in an old barn. This CS80 was in the guy's house, neither dusty nor dirty, in brand new condition, with all of the accessories. It had never even been moved around, except once when they bought a new home. And not only was there a CS80, he also had an MS-10, a CR78, and a few other goodies. Once we got that beauty back to the shop, we had the distinction for a short while of having 2 CS80s. We gave this new one a calibration and changed a light bulb in one of the preset buttons. And then it was as near to perfect as a CS80 can get. No, strike that. It was perfect. Finding a new home for this remarkable synthesizer didn't take long. David, who is a bass music producer under the moniker Freak Nor, decided he wanted a CS80. And late at night, on a long synth trip, I was able to deliver his dream.
It is gorgeous.
Yeah, it looks pretty amazing.
And that's who was texting now.
Yeah, that line seems to keep getting me into trouble.
Let's back up one more episode.
Hi, Chuck. How are you, Sam?
I'm doing great.
Oh, my goodness.
When we met a year ago, I said, "Is there any synthesizer you're looking for? I can find it for you." I didn't know you were going to say a DX1.
That's beautiful.
Yamaha made the DX1 in 1983. It was one of the most expensive synthesizers available, and there were only about 140 of them that rolled off the production line. I was pretty sure I had put my foot in my mouth, saying I could find any synth he was looking for. But after a year of searching, I finally delivered a pristine DX1 to Chuck Surak. the founder of Sweetwater Sound.
Very cool.
I guess I had made the same bold claim to David. So what was he after now?
I thought it was going to be impossible to find a DX1 because there were only 140 of those in existence. Now, here's David wanting a Moog System 55 reissue. They only made 55 of those.
When we think back to the very first days of synthesizers, we often think of the Mini Moog as being the first commercially available synthesizer that could actually be carted off to a gig. Released in 1970, it was a wonderful electronic instrument that was well designed, well built, and sounded fantastic. Many thousands of them were sold over a 12-year production run. It's the one synthesizer I have vowed that I will never be without. I love the Mini Moog Model D and its ladder filter so much that I wrote a prayer about it and had it painted on the wall of our showroom.
Our filter, which sound like heaven, ladder be thy name.
But what came before the Mini Moog? It was 1964 when Bob Moog first built a modular electronic synthesizer prototype, and soon thereafter he was custom building systems for universities and recording studios. By 1967, Moog Music had a commercially available product line, offering some standard configurations of modular systems. They sold 23 synthesizers that year, including one to Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees, the first rock musician to buy a Moog synthesizer. These synths were typically huge electronic beasts comprised of individual modules, where each module created or shaped a sound in certain ways. Whichever modules you wanted to use to make a particular sound needed to be patched together manually using patch cables.
Take for instance this 3-oscillator bass sound on the Mini Moog. I could make that exact same sound on a Moog Modular synthesizer.
I would just need to take 3 oscillator modules and plug in patch cables to connect all 3 to a mixer module. I would then take the output of that mixer and plug a cable to connect it to a filter module. The output of that filter then gets plugged into a VCA module to control the amplitude, and that VCA needs to be controlled by an envelope generator, so we'll get an envelope generator module and plug that into the VCA's control input. And we'll need another envelope generator so that it can separately control the filter, so we'll plug that one into the filter's control input. Then we'll need the output plugged to an amplifier and speaker so that we can hear it, and we'll also need to connect a keyboard to control the whole thing, so we'll plug that up too. Now we've got the modules patched correctly, and we'll just need to go through each module and set every knob so that we get the desired sound. And once this is all done, we can finally play a total of 1 note at a time.
We're a little spoiled these days when we can just press a button to call up program 73, Mini Moog Bass.
Using a modular synthesizer certainly takes more patience than using a more normal synthesizer. Yes, it can be tedious plugging in all of those patch cables just to make the one sound, but the beauty of a modular system is that you're not limited by the voice architecture of any specific synthesizer. If you want to make a 5-oscillator bass sound, get 5 oscillator modules and patch them together. If you want to control the filter cutoff with the output of a ring modulator, patch it on up. Anything you dream up, you can create, given enough modules and patch cables. As a result, modular systems are wonderful for creating amazingly complex and unique sounds, things that just couldn't be done with an out-of-the-box synth. They are perfect for film music and sound effects. An ARP 2600 was used to create the voice of R2-D2 in Star Wars. And the mothership in Close Encounters of the Third Kind wasn't going to land without the melodic guidance of an ARP 2500 modular system. In the last decade or two, modular synthesis has exploded, particularly in the smaller Eurorack format. And there are scores of independent manufacturers making modules that range from standard oscillators and VCAs to things you would never dream of, like the mechanical resonator from Error Instruments, which gives you a spring that you can physically pluck or scratch or spank, or the Earth Return Distortion, which literally includes dirt in the circuit. Literally, dirt! Independent circuit designers are running rampant in the Eurorack world, and there's no telling what madness will come of it. When the debut album from Emerson, Lake and Palmer was released in November 1970, it had Moog synthesizer all over it, propelled by the fingers of virtuoso Keith Emerson. And while the Mini Moog quickly became a staple of Emerson's arsenal, the centerpiece of his keyboard setup was a huge Moog Modular synthesizer. Emerson had customized his system with the modules needed for ELP performances, and in 1973, Moog began offering a standard modular configuration inspired by his setup, and called it the System 55. The System 55 consisted of 36 modules, including 7 oscillators. The behemoth also included a sequencing module, which is much more than just a note recorder. The Model 960 sequential controller has the capacity to drive anything that accepts control voltage, so it can sequence filter cutoff and amplitude, for instance, as well as the pitch of notes. With Keith Emerson showcasing their instruments on concert stages around the world, and with these new electronic sounds starting to be heard on records like Switched On Bach, the Moog name became practically synonymous with the word synthesizer. Despite the success of Moog synthesizers in the making of music, Moog was less successful in the making of dollars. Bob Moog was a brilliant engineer, less so a businessman. He was about $250,000 in debt in 1971, so he sold a controlling interest in his company to Musonics. 2 years later, Musonics was sold to Norland Musical Instruments, and Bob Moog stayed on as a designer until 1977. At that point, he was fed up with the operation, sold his ownership stake, and left to form a small company called Big Briar, which built theremins, effects pedals, and other musical electronics. The company that bore his name continued to produce synthesizers, but fewer and fewer of them, as digital synthesizers became the big new thing. As the DX7 began taking over the keyboard world, Moog Music changed its name to Moog Electronics, and was soon building subway door openers, climate control systems, and other non-musical devices. That company was eventually sold again, and then quietly put out to pasture. In 2002, Big Briar changed its name back to Moog Music, and Bob Moog was back in the synthesizer business. Sadly, just 3 years later, he passed away from brain cancer. But the company has continued on to this day, specializing in analog synthesizers. In 2015, over 50 years after it was first released, Moog Music reissued the System 55 with a very limited run of 55 faithful recreations that were handmade in their Asheville, North Carolina factory. And it was one of these limited edition modular synthesizers that David was dreaming of. When the call came in for a System 55, I pondered how to go about finding one of these rare beasts. Alexa, find a Moog System 55 reissue for sale. But in the end, it seemed best just to reach out to some fellow synth nuts and see if anyone had any leads. Who knows, maybe I would get lucky and someone could point me to a friend whose brother knew a guy who dated a girl whose dad saw one of these listed on Craigslist the last time he traveled through Kalamazoo.
I have to say that David the Moog Seeker must have some good karma built up, because within an hour or two, I had located 3 out of the 55 Moog System 55 reissues that exist.
One had just sold at auction. Another was living happily in the Tuscan countryside, under the beloved care of an Italian dentist. But a third one was right here in the US of A.
Just one problem, none of these was for sale.
When Moog reissued the System 55 back in 2015, they were priced at $35,000 without the keyboard. 55 people got lucky.
The System 55 wasn't cheap to begin with, and like most collectible synthesizers, prices have only gone...
I don't know the final price of the one that sold at auction. Il Dentista Italiano had an extra cabinet of modules, one of them with a Keith Emerson autograph, and he would consider parting with his system for a price approaching 6 figures. Plus, it would have to be crated and transported across the ocean. So I looked into that third system that was closer to home and learned something amazing.
It was still in the crate, brand new, never even opened. If we could get this one for the right price, we could offer our buyer a brand new System 55. He could make his own unboxing video.
From the time David had sent his first text, letting me know he wanted a System 55, barely 8 hours had passed before I was letting him know about these possibilities. And after negotiating with the owner of this unboxed Moog and giving him a few days to ponder whether he really wanted to sell it, we had a deal.
Show me the money!
The hunt that I thought would take many months was over in a few days. Now I just had to buy the System 55 and get it to its new owner. And that's why Mary and I are driving the synthmobile to the airport. Flying for a few hours seems much easier than driving for 3 days. But it's December, and we have a layover in Denver, which has just been pounded by a blizzard. They managed to get some runways open, and we managed to land, but it's looking frightful. And I'm worried we might get snowed in, which would be a catastrophe, because our seller is flying in from another state to meet us where he has the Moog stored. We finally taxi out, discover that something broke when the plane was getting towed out, return to the gate for a repair, taxi out again, spend some time de-icing, and then zip off into the friendly skies. Sometime later, we pass over the Lake Tahoe area. That's where we'll be delivering this Moog system. And those mountains are blanketed in snow. Yeah, it may look pretty, but all I can think about is driving a van on those slippery roads with a really rare, really expensive synthesizer in the back. Yikes! Once we're on the ground, it's time to collect our baggage, and since my wife is with me, there's a bit more than usual. Then we pick up a rental van, and we're off to the San Francisco Bay Area to meet Ben, the seller.
Hi, y'all.
Hello.
Oh, we better shake hands again.
Yes, for the video, for sure.
Here's my wife, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Ben had the System 55 all ready to go for us.
Yeah. These are the 3 boxes that came with it. I don't remember anything else coming with it. But hopefully there's some cables in there or something.
Hopefully there's some synthesizer.
Yeah, well, that's the most important thing for sure.
I wanted to at least make sure that these weren't just boxes of rocks. And then this rare Moog system was loaded into the van for its next journey. But before leaving, Ben showed us some of the other treasures he had in his synthesizer warehouse. One of them was serial number 2 of Axel Hartmann's 20 synthesizer, of which there were 20 made in silver and 20 made in black. It's a spectacular look for a synth which was designed with no budget constraints.
Really cool.
And the case is milled from a solid aluminum block. Based on the Waldorf Sledge synth engine, but with supercharged op amps, one of the oscillators includes the classic PPG wavetables, and the 20 also has samples from Hartmann's rare Neuron synth. It was a real treat to lay hands on this gorgeous creation. And then it was our job to drive the Moog Modular over the Sierra Nevada mountains in December, immediately following a considerable snowstorm, which often causes the Donner Pass to be closed. Let me just clarify. I'm a southerner, so when the temperature drops into the 50s, that's into the teens if you're one of those Celsius people, I get really cold and I start worrying about the repercussions of that severe weather. So when there's snow around and I have to drive in it, I'm flat out terrified. So driving the snowy Sierra Nevada mountains with this precious cargo in my care gives me quite a bit of anxiety. But it's a beautiful drive, the freeway has been plowed, and it's smooth sailing all the way to our destination. Well, almost all the way. Okay, we're trying to deliver this Moog. We're going up a mountain to a very windy driveway up the icy mountain in Truckee, California, and it's too icy for this van. We try to go forward, but the van only wants to go backwards. So David's on his way to hopefully rescue us, and if he doesn't, we'll see you next spring when this thaws out. Since down was the only direction we could travel, David suggested we back down the mountain to a point where we could meet up with him. Backing down the mountain very slowly and carefully. Whew. Worried that if I'll stop too much, the van won't. Looks like we're almost in the clear, and he's going to have a buddy that has a 4x4 truck meet us, and we'll move the stuff to his truck. Aside from the road being very icy, the snow is deep and the roadway is barely wide enough for the van, so there's no room for error, or we're into the snow. Glad there's not a lot of traffic.
Brakes are hanging in there.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there was a bit of traffic. Dealing with this stuff terrifies me, but the locals make it look easy.
And then, a Christmas miracle.
Finally, the rescue team arrived. This is Mary, this is David.
Hi, welcome to Truckee.
Wow.
What a welcome.
I told you that bed was full of snow.
Hi, everyone. Doing a little maintenance, but it's all gonna work out.
Those guys had to dig out the bed of the truck so that there would be room for the synthesizer crates.
All right, so I think maybe we'll pull forward. And
Pull forwarding and get 5 feet away.
Yeah, and then we'll do the great synth exchange. It's definitely still in the box.
And I hope it's more than bricks or something.
Yeah, that'd be weird. Yeah,
but I did pop this.
I will find you.
And I did see a Moog keyboard.
Okay, cool. So let's get some.
Lift with your back, not your legs.
Yeah. Got it. Transition. Synthesizer. Yeah, got it.
Kind of let your side go down. Real smooth.
And with that, a rare Moog System 55 changed hands on a snowy mountaintop on a dark winter's night. It was certainly not the normal Synth Wizards experience, but it did bring David some Christmas joy.
Sam, it's been another exciting adventure.
Indeed.
I will send you some footage.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah,
Hey,
see you, buddy.
great to
Yeah,
meet
you too, man.
Aaron, thanks for your help.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you.
Merry
All right.
Christmas. Safe travels.
I cannot believe that you found one of these things. I can't
Whoa, what now?
Now we try to get down the hill and get out of here. Right rear tire low. Add air to tire.
Do we have to let them by? How are we maneuvering
he's already
the
gone.
situation?
As we headed back to warmer climes, David and his buddies got the System 55 set up and sounding its first notes. One of the coolest things about hunting down rare and vintage synthesizers is that I get to see and play instruments that I would never have had the opportunity to experience otherwise. So this journey was pretty unusual in that regard. We found a super rare Moog System 55, and unbelievably it was still in the crates. We delivered it to the Lake Tahoe area, and David, the new owner, was super excited to get it. But throughout the entire story, I never got to see it, touch it, or hear it, other than moving the crates from point A to point B. But that's okay. I get a warm glow from being able to get such a wonderful synth into the hands of someone who will love and cherish it. We need more warm glows in this world. And more warm, fat synthesizer music.